to matters overseas, where this is pretty heartbreaking. And Jim Molan was on our show the night that it was announced that there was to be a peace deal between the United States and the Taliban, where the Taliban will effectively take back over Afghanistan. And we are now starting to see what they are doing, which is, among other things, releasing up to 1,500 prisoners that have been taken prisoner on the battlefield over the past 20 years for all sorts of horrible things, and they will effectively now be able to walk free as the withdrawal agreement has been signed and now slowly begins in earnest. Here's the latest from Fox in America.
After almost 20 years of conflict, US troops have started pulling out of Afghanistan. The Pentagon confirming the withdrawal on Monday, writing in part, quote, US Forces Afghanistan maintains all the military means and authorities to accomplish our objectives, including conducting counter-terrorism operations against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Troop levels will go from about 12,000 to about 8,600 over the next 135 days. It's a key component of the peace deal recently signed with the Taliban.
This should have been done a long time ago, but you can only hold somebody's hand for so long. We have to get back to running our country.
The US is also pushing for the UN Security Council to now endorse the deal with the Taliban.
Now, you know, I love the great man, right? No question that I love the great man, but I don't like this decision. I know why this decision has happened, because you can't have a war forever to keep, you know, the Taliban at bay. But effectively, I mean, Jim Molan really struggled with the idea that the treasure and lives that have been lost, and I asked him a very direct question. I wish we had it on tape, but I'll try to do it justice. Is the Taliban that will re-inherit Afghanistan any different than the Taliban who was booted out in 2001? Answer, no. Now they're going to make promises about girls. They're going to make all sorts of promises. But it's frightening to me, Stephen, that where we're going on this and why we've got there.
There's been a security briefing in secret, as they should be, to a number of the Congress, and at least one member of Congress has said that the deal is pretty weak. The accountabilities on the Taliban are very poor. They're flimsy. You could drive a truck through them, and that the president has signed a bad deal. And I mean, it's hard to just make a judgment based on that. But when you see stories like, you know, 1,500 Talibans who were shooting at Australian soldiers are going to be put back in charge of the country, you've got to think that this is not the best outcome. Yeah,
I mean, Pauline, I repeat, I'm a supporter of Trump, right? I'm not looking for the exits. I'm not about to jump onto Biden land. But, you know, no person is perfect, and I certainly think this is, at the very least, an imperfect outcome.
It is, Paul. I went to Afghanistan less than 2 years ago, and I went to Kabul and I was with the armies over there, so I had a good understanding with it. I went through the barracks with the Afghan army and saw how they are actually being trained, the young ones coming through, and they need that period of time, the training, because they're so used to being under the Russians and how they were trained. But with the different forces from America, Australia, Canada and England, they were learning a hell of a lot. What they're concerned about then, before they actually get their own strength with the Afghan army as they build it over a period of time, is that the concern was with the Taliban and ISIS, because they were fighting out amongst themselves and they will be the ones to take over the country again. The country is now, through, you know, having the Western societies there, you have more freedom to the people, democracy, voting, women are getting into jobs like the military and into the policing and different things, so it's changed and it's a lot better for the people. Whereas even to go to voting, even though there was bombings that were happening, the people still lined up. They didn't want to be deterred by it. If we pull out of there too soon before this transition happens, to give the people their own strength to take control of their own country, it will go back into the hands of the Taliban. This is a grave concern to me if they're doing this and releasing the Taliban, because they have this mindset, this ideology. They will take over if the people are not ready to take control and the experience and knowledge to combat them without the forces of America and the other countries like Australia helping them.
Yeah, I mean, Corey, I get it. You can't have a war forever. They are deeply unpopular and incredibly expensive. But, I mean, if Obama was criticised for pulling out of Iraq too quickly, because it creates a vacuum. Isn't that exactly what's happening in Afghanistan?
Paul, I have a different view to the rest of you. I think getting troops, Western troops out of Afghanistan is a prudent thing to do. The country is a basket case. The most recent elections are still disputed. I don't think there's any hope for it. It is a fiefdom controlled by warlords, and the only thing you can do is try and contain it. And that means, I think we should look at having sanctions, economic sanctions against it. You should prohibit migration or anything else from those parts of the world, whatever we can do to look after ourselves. The time of being a global policeman for America, I think, is for people that don't want them, that aren't their allies, is, I think, over. And they should stick to defending Israel and their allies like Australia.